Angela, you mentioned in your comments that you on this tour are interfacing with folks who have never been on the beneficiary side of the American dream. They've only known the horror to the story, only lived the horrors of the story. And in fact, in many instances have had the institutions weaponized and turned against them for as long as memory serves. So we know what it isn't, but what is it?
I think it's the antithesis of everything we see crumbling, right? Like, I think that in order for us to construct something different, I think Tiff has been saying on the show almost weekly that she doesn't think that this is salvageable. And I think in order for us to determine, where the trouble lies, where are all of the issues, we have to talk about what is broken. So from the legislature to the judiciary to the media, the responsible of the media. You talked earlier on this call about campaign finance issues, the access to the voting booth. We're in a society where, as he just talked about in the excerpt of the speech we played, where diversity and difference is called illegal, right? Like, I don't know what you can say about that. And then the construct of a two-party system where you have to figure out a way to force yourself into a space that may or may not really represent your interests. Mm-hmm. There are a bunch of issues, and I think that it would do our podcast good and our community good to even engage around this about what are all the broken pieces. There are focus groups that were done over the last several weeks, and then this Catalyst report that came out. But in these focus groups, they go and they talk to Black folks who've traditionally been Democratic voters about all of the issues they see with the party. Well, the issues that they see with the party are also the things being reflected back in society, right? The party, the Democratic Party, is seeing itself as the thing that should be the protector of a system that in so many ways is an affront to us, mm-hmm. has been disrespectful to us, has not seen us, has not valued us, and has treated many of us as a transaction.
Sure.
I'm not suggesting that we go to the other party. I'm suggesting that we find ourselves homeless, mm-hmm. And I think that is another real issue. So we are wrestling with a crisis that we saw play out in an election in this past fall. We are seeing one that played out in an election in 2016 on the other side of a pandemic in 2020, where people can question science. That I think is the erosion of democracy too. Like, climate change is a thing, and they are arguing that it's not a thing, and then going to double down in the things that cause the greatest harm against clean drinking water, against access to, anyway.
I'll camp out here because I think there are a lot. I would just say two things. One, when we got to the point, and I would make the argument that Fox News is probably the largest, if not singletary contributor to this, except that they are regulated through the FCC, and then within the broadcast and the news and journalism community is supposed to be another check on it, which I would argue has completely failed. But when Fox News got in the position where they could disconnect facts from basically that there would be no true arbiter of what is real and what isn't. So they eroded the lines, they confused the facts and came up with alternative facts, and then made alternative facts a thing, right? When really an alternative fact is a lie. An alternative fact is false. But they were able to blur the lines between what is somebody's opinion and then what is a fact. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own fact. The facts are what they are, and you can derive from them whatever opinion you may wish. But there are some agreed upon foundational things that if we're both looking at this goddamn paper and we see 12 and 12 is the only number on there, you can't say 32. And unfortunately, they got away with that. And there's that genie has not been put back in a bottle at all. In fact, it's running rampant all throughout the society. and our failure at the regulatory place to enforce some dictum, some regulatory consequence for that erosion is the fault of a democracy, is the fault of the institutions failing, largely due to cowardice, I would submit. The other thing I would say is democracy to me doesn't and shouldn't equal a two-party system.
Right.
In fact, I think I would like to imagine a place where parties, different than what they do today, where they have statutory significance and presence. There are lines and laws that describe how Democrats and Republicans are to then extract power or assume their power in our democracy, and it gives no regard to other minor parties, none of any significance. So what if everybody at the age of 18 or 16 were able to vote without registering? What if by right of the fact that you were a U.S. citizen, that you can go in any ballot box wherever it is that you call yourself home and vote on any election? And why is it that if you are a Democrat or Republican, you're the only ones who participate in a primary, and everybody else has to wait to the very end before people even know that there's a race to be considered? An election has happened and they haven't even been able to consume the information because they're not a part of the Democratic or the Republican Party. In fact, in many states, no party affiliate and independent is the majority registration. Mm-hmm. So if we were to abolish the fact that you didn't have to be a Democrat or a Republican, and that the systems and laws were not constructed to value you above everybody else, what if in a democratic society, we had branches of government that were actually accountable to the people that put them there, meaning the voters, rather than the moneyed interests that runs roughshod over everything? Regulatory, governance, you name it, they got it. I think in a democracy, your history as a former felon should be of no consequence once you've repaid your debt to society, meaning you served your time. And if you don't have a felony and you're incarcerated, you should be gift wrapped your ballot box because you still have the right to vote. Yet many of people who are sitting in jail yet waiting a trial are never ever reminded of the fact that they still have their constitutional and legal rights to vote. So from top to bottom, the system is designed for the powerful to keep power. And that's Democrat or Republican. For those in power to keep power, and everybody else to hell with you. They could care less. And then we wonder why people complain about never having their streets paved, no libraries, no fresh food markets, no recreation that includes trees and paved park and bike lanes and so on and so forth. They've already told us that we don't matter. And then we try to do this exercise of get out to vote, get out to vote, get out to vote. And folks are like, vote for what?
I just want to say bike lanes are for terrorist activity. They stress me.
You sound like my mama about roundabouts.
Anyway.
But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
The needs, the basic needs, the stuff that's so essential is a dream to people because that's how bad the system fails us. I'm done on it, Tiff.
Well,
I know you.
I feel like I am in a different state of mind than you and Angela, maybe, because what you guys are talking about all makes sense. You know, I don't disagree with anything you said. That is how you can fix this broken system that exists now. I think my perspective is still developing, you know, so y'all give me some grace to the audience as I'm figuring out what makes sense. Right. I just want to make it clear to the audience. Like I'm trying to figure this shit out myself. I don't know that this is a system. Like even what you all are talking about, if we tap into our imagination, it talks about the system itself. And even an idea of voting, the idea of even having prisons. You know, these are things that I don't know that I connect with anymore. As soon as I realize that this is all just a set of unspoken guidelines that are not truly enforceable, then it just became, well, then what are we even doing here? Enough people just decided, well, Constitution. Like, what emoluments clause? We don't care about that. You know, who cares about this 14th Amendment? Who cares? If they can tap into their imagination on that level, then we can go a lot further. So I don't even know. Like, when we talk about the party, I got to be honest, I don't really care about the Democratic Party right now. That's not, I don't feel aligned. Now, that is not to say that we should not vote and we should not hold them accountable.
Sure.
Like, we gave them power. And I mean that specifically. We gave them power. We are the voting base. But I mean, if we look at the macro and not the micro, I just, even this idea of capitalism, that was born out of the plantation and slavery. Even this idea of how far we've come. Well, in reading, it will show you if we start with slavery, then everything we done look like progress. But if you go before that, we still in debt. We are still having those problems. So when we ask the question, what does democracy look like to us? That's why I say I kind of got to strike the term democracy. I talked about this before. The book, The Poisonwood Bible, where they, historical fiction, where they talk about the reign of Lumumba and the, local savages, as the white people looked at them, talked about how the American democracy makes no sense. You telling me this 18-year-old boy got as much power as me and I'm a chief? And his opinion counts the same as mine? You telling me because 49% of your people can be unhappy just because 51% of your people like it? That makes sense to y'all in America?
Yeah, they sound like the founders.
This is my point. When you look at the founders, this is why I say reading, and right now is a time for reading, listening, and learning. I wonder when Abraham Lincoln said, you know what? When he called the black folks and said, I don't want to live with y'all because y'all ain't never going to let us forget slavery. And we don't want to be reminded of that shit. Y'all going to always be mad at us. We going to be mad at y'all. I think y'all should just get the out. I'm wondering now, like, you know what? He might have had a point. Because if we are still fighting these same battles, and it's true, we have never confronted that history. So if we're still fighting that, I just don't know that trying to save, repair, or build a system within this construct of whiteness and white power and a ruling class that has been overwhelmingly white makes sense for us. So I don't know that we can serve. Even if I thought it was salvageable, I don't know that it's possible to save it when looking at a multi-racial, multi-ethnic society where everyone arrives to participate on equal footing. I think they will worship their true God, and that is power, and they will destroy everything in its path before they allow that to happen.
I actually think, I don't think there's a race to power. Right now, we can associate a race to power, right? Because it's been the same ones in charge for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think were it all black people in charge, we would still have a problem with the corrosive effects of power. We gave the example of
power.
Abuse of power.
Well, I think power inevitably leads to abuse. I don't know that there is a model of a ruling class, of a powerful class that doesn't act to protect itself.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.